Looking at the overall picture of the world economy, the COVID-19 pandemic broke the global supply chain. This has a significant impact on each country's economy, and the real estate sector is no exception. The market situation in the first quarter of 2020 was extremely quiet compared to the same period in previous years. The supply of the market in the first quarter reached 52,000 products, including 18,000 new products, but the absorption rate was only 14%. The volume of supply, number of transactions and absorption rate were at the lowest level of the past 4 years. The COVID-19 pandemic made many sectors, such as resorts, townhouses, villas, shophouses and apartments, fall into a predicament. Many projects had to postpone the sales schedule from the initial projections due to a fear of lack of purchasing power, while the organisation of sale opening events had to stop. Online transactions only partially support, but could not replace direct trading methods. The limited contact between people was considered the main reason, making the transactions in apartment projects sharply decrease.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Sharing Vietnam on VTC 10 Netflix channel. We just have watched a short video about the real estate situation in Vietnamese market. And today we're going to have a conversation with Mr. Alex Krend, who is the great expert representing for the real estate foreigner in Vietnam. And to talk more about this situation after the pandemic COVID. Hello, Mr. Alex, and thank you for taking time to join the show.
Thank you very much, and hello to everyone at home. Thanks for welcoming me here to the show.
First off, as you already know, that we just experienced tough days coping with the COVID-19 pandemic. Most of the business, production, and service sectors have been affected significantly. Some businesses have even fell into misery and complete decommissioning. What about the real estate market in Vietnam?
I think, look, every industry has felt the hit of the pandemic. Ours is no exception, and of course we work with many clients across every type of industry here in Vietnam. So the last few months, of course, have been a great challenge, I think, for everybody. But coming back to the office in May, we've seen some really good activity and a lot of positivity and positive sentiment from clients, from investors that are here in Vietnam or from overseas. I think, of course, the initial concern for everybody was safety and looking after employees. So, the first action points taken for many were to engage with the government advice, which I think the government here has been tremendous in the communication to business, which has helped us through this pandemic. So, first level, of course, for I think people like myself, was to look after our teams, making sure that we're having certain social distancing in the business operations. Then we're getting ready to maybe a preparation stage of when the markets might reopen. And of course, through that period, we're guiding a lot of clients and giving advice on what may be about to happen next. Of course, some areas of the markets have been hit harder than others, but we do see a strong rebound coming from Vietnam. There's a little bit of a lag. A lot of our trading partners are still on lockdown. A lot of them didn't follow the good advice that we had here in Vietnam, so the recovery will be a little bit slower. So sector by sector, we've seen quite different responses to the pandemic, and I think we'll see various speeds of recovery coming out of this situation.
So in segments of real estate markets, which one are the most heavily affected and which are immune from the COVID-19 pandemic, and why? Yeah,
I think the most obvious, obviously, is the hospitality sector. We are down on international arrivals 50% in Q1. And of course, we've still got a delay until maybe July when they open borders, but then a lot of understanding about who might be welcome to join, to come and visit. So hospitality for sure was the first and worst hit, and it's probably going to be the slowest, I think, to come out of this phase of pandemic. Thereafter, I think the markets have actually shown some stability and robustness. The residential sector, I think, sort of hit a pause. I wouldn't say it took a big sort of hit from pandemic in terms of activity. Of course, volumes of transactions were down, But that's not to say that the demand will go away. I think it's actually just hit a pause button, and I think that will be lifting as we're coming out of lockdown state. Residential markets here in particular are driven by confidence. As I said, government performance has been fantastic, and that's actually driven a lot of confidence of people within the country. The sectors I think that were probably least impacted and showed maybe more standardized levels of activity were in the sort of corporate and commercial areas. So in the office segment, for example, our broker teams were busy throughout the period, maybe not signing on deals, but certainly deals were still progressing. And actually some very interesting discussions between sort of tenant and landlord, and I must say quite honourable conversations. No one really took a sort of opportunistic view of taking the opposing side of the negotiating table to trouble. There was a sort of willingness to work together and work through the situation until lockdown lifted, and then we saw a lot of transactions completing. Then I think the one that also will come back a little slower, but without doubt will be a bright spot going forward, is the industrial manufacturing space. Again, a lot of these sort of production facilities during lockdown had a lot of staff sort of either working on shifts. Those are now reopening and start buying our produce again. So we'll start, I think, seeing that return probably Q3 and Q4.
So during the pandemic, social isolation, what have businesses and real estate investors in Vietnam been doing to maintain their operation?
We at that point decided just to segregate the business. So we wanted no cross-contamination in the company. So we had people on a red team and a yellow team, and we kind of worked 1 week off, 1 week from home. And then, of course, the whole country went into lockdown, so everyone's at home. So that was more of a case of just preparedness of being able to work remotely. We found the transition of that really easy. IT infrastructure in Vietnam, internet connectivity is very good. Our back office was, fortunately set up to accommodate that. So very little disruption, and people are becoming very familiar. We were lucky we didn't have to make any adjustment to our teams. We have all the people that were with us before, so we're very happy to have that. But of course, companies have to go through that process. So non-essential spend, of course, we've been cutting out, whether that's sort of certain marketing or travel, of course, is an easy one. But I think the world went into this situation understanding from previous crises, financial crisis being the most recent, that we need to be coming into these or prepared for these situations, and that's just simple corporate governance. I think that's just the responsibility of business leaders to have a business in the right shape in case this sort of thing happens.
Up to now, Vietnam has controlled COVID-19 very well. All buying and selling activities have become active again, such as some projects of Vinhome's Ocean Park, with average sales of 150 units per week, Wyndham, Linh Thanh, Tan Thuy, with average sales of 50 units per week. In the southern market, there has been large-scale preparation of investors, such as Novaland and Nam Long, and such information receives a positive response from investors. In addition, a variety of good information for the market is related to legal issues. Those are really important points to remove difficulties for investors. Some investors have reasonable and careful calculations to create good quality real estate products, in line with the current trend of ensuring utilities and combining with green areas. For example, the Lim Tower 3 office building, located in District 1, Ho Chi Minh City, was just launched in 2019. The COVID-19 pandemic caused a lot of economic losses, but on the positive side, it also helped businesses draw lessons as well as re-examine their finances. And that is the motivation for creative progress and breakthroughs in the market.
There are some opinions that pandemic has covered a cloudy color in Vietnamese real estate market. However, there are also opposite opinions from some experts that this is an opportunity for smart investment and purification of the market. So from the perspective of the foreign expert, what is your opinion?
And I touched on it just now, going back to that point of strong corporate governance, right? So I think what we'll see going into these pandemics is perhaps some less well-run businesses finding it harder than those that have prepared well or in a more robust state going into this. So from an investor standpoint, that will create opportunities. If there are smaller developers, investors that are having a bit of pain, this will lead to deals, this will lead to opportunities for smart investors to come in and choose where they want to go and play. If you look at that in an M&A scenario, those companies with the governance are going to be very attractive to companies and investors overseas that are looking at Vietnam. So that, I think, is something that will come out of this very, very positively. I think, again, that strong financial footing of investors and developers will carry us through. We're not over-leveraged. There's not too much distress and financial distress in the segments. So I think we'll see that performance kick through. And that's not to say that there is a lot of interest in Vietnam. There was going into this pandemic, and I think finding opportunities now is probably going to be the more challenging part, and finding clean and sort of quite attractive from a corporate standpoint of the right places, the right companies you might want to make a bet on in the coming months, because for sure there's going to be this time of growth, rebound and acceleration in many sectors that I think is just really exciting to investors that are already here.
As you know, after a long time of preventing and fighting against the pandemic, currently all the economics and social activities are gradually returned to normal. As for the real estate markets, what side of its reviving have we seen?
The earliest signals for me are always, the brokers in my team. These are the guys that are out on the street every day trying to lease office space or trying to cut deals with tenants and landlords. And the fact that they almost feel like they're not in the office still is good, because they're out on the street, they're out talking to people, and the deals are getting done. So just at the purest level, those indicators are very important to me, because what happened in February is sort of irrelevant. So we have to restart. And way we can do that. So looking at the inquiry levels that we're getting for real estate and watching the brokers running out and trying to find solutions to the deals that need to be done, it is a very good signal for us coming out. And actually May for us, I think we closed more deals in May than any month in the year prior. Of course, there's this pent-up need to get deals done in May after the lockdown. But if that's an early signal, then I think that's a pretty strong one. The other guys in our office that are really important are the quiet sort of consultants and researchers, because these are the guys that are getting calls from overseas, from investors asking us to look at what the market's going to be doing in the next 6 months to the next year, because they're forming strategies for Vietnam. And that's telling us that the investment is there and ready to be deployed in Vietnam. So just on the purest levels, those early signals are very, very positive to what might be coming in the next 12 to 18 months.
Can you share some tips for businesses and investors in the post-pandemic market recovery period?
Yeah, I think I touched on before, just having that good governance and making sure your counterparty, if you're an investor, have they got the same governance? Are they prepared in the event, or are they strong enough to survive this kind of shock? I think with Vietnam, the advice to investors is always the same. It's very heavy due diligence and an understanding of who you want to be investing with, and there's certain segments that may be targets for the investors coming in here. It can be a very frustratingly slow process, but I think in some ways that cuts a bit of speculation. And speculation, particularly when you're coming out of a pandemic like this, you probably don't want that disruption and risk. Running that due diligence and full understanding, and being very early when you're coming in on your market entry analysis, getting that consulting, as I said, is starting to ramp up again, and making sure information is key coming into this as you're making those big strategic decisions to invest in a M&A target or invest in a specific segment. But I think many of those sort of pieces of advice are a good business practice, would probably existed before the pandemic took hold.
Thank you very much for your useful information.
Thank you very much. Very good to speak to you.
And thank you for watching. See you next time.